Hey, how's it going, everybody? So you've got Donovan here with Music Retail Podcast and Ernie Williams Music, but then I also today have a really special guest, one that I'm really excited to get to do. This is my friend EJ Dombrowski from Jim's Music up in Green Bay, Wisconsin, and Upper Peninsula area of Michigan, Upper Michigan. And EJ and I have been friends for years. How many years have we been friends, EJ?
Eight now.
8 years.
I
Okay, yeah, I know
yeah
it's like a long time,
yeah
and it all started because you had reached out to me to ask him some questions. You probably remember this story better than I do. How did we first
I
meet?
did.
What's our
I
what's
re
our meet cute story?
Mute cute story. So I remember I saw this guy on the cover of a magazine, and again, never thought you'd respond, to be honest. But I think I emailed you. You were talking about your lesson program. I was like, oh, that's really cool. Totally something different that we don't do. And I emailed you about that, and that's kind of where it started. And that's one of the things I wanted to talk about because that changed our business. So it was pretty kind of
Yeah,
exciting. You made a big impact on us. So
I've had so many great relationships and friendships that just started through someone reaching out and shooting off an email. Our friends Lyndon Lance started the same thing
yeah,
a couple of years ago. He emailed me
cigars
and he
and
was like,
bourbon.
"Hey, I see you're going to be at NASMD. Would you be up for meeting for bourbon and cigars? And let me pick your brain for a minute." And I replied back like, "Did we just become best friends?"
That's the best response ever.
And we did, we
Oh,
did, we
yeah,
did. So
yeah,
yeah, man, that was such a fortuitous moment when you reached out because that kind of started our relationship of like yeah, originally I was answering questions that you had about lessons and other stuff, but man, we have both learned so much from each other over the years. It's been just such a tremendous not only friendship but just relationship. Like it's been super helpful. And one of my favorite things about EJ is he's extremely resourceful, very smart. EJ is he's too humble, but he's one of the smartest guys in our industry for sure. And he's extremely resourceful, and he wants to do all the things that he sees the big stores do and the guys that have like millions of dollars in budgets for various projects. But at Jim's Music, being in that Green Bay, Upper Michigan area, like he just doesn't have the budget to go out and hire a full-blown marketing department and everything else. So a lot of the stuff that he does, he just sort of like shoestrings and puts together himself and becomes and I mean, you just have a lot of really great uh, things that you've developed to make Jim's Music successful and thrive. And I think that you would say that you feel like those are things that are necessary to keep Jim's Music going on. So we're going to kind of dive deep into that. So definitely, if you're a music store owner and you're like, especially if you're a smaller shop now, Jim's Music has multiple locations. But if you feel like, man, there's never enough people to go around to do my projects, I need to be more resourceful. I need to be more creative. I think you're going to definitely love this episode where listen to EJ kind of talk about how he's done it. So before we get into all that, let's get everybody kind of a quick background about like Jim's Music. Tell me how many locations, where you're located. I know Jim is your dad, so tell us a little bit about Dad, how he got started, and how you came into the business.
sure. Thank you for the high praise there. I don't feel like I deserve it, but
You definitely do.
uh, uh, all right. So we've got four locations. I guess to really understand the company, you kind of have to understand my dad and the way we started. My dad's a very smart guy, but he'll be the first to tell you he was not a business owner or like a businessman. So he was a guitar instructor and the owner of the store. We came into this kind of like a very like common story, I feel like, on starting a music store. Uh, Business owner came in and said, "Hey, next month we're closing." Didn't Totally different. And my dad went home and said, "Oh my gosh, I'm losing my job in 4 weeks. What are we gonna do?" And my mom was kind of the uh, driven, we'll say. And she's like, "Well, we'll have to start your own." So she called the city, and like that, that day that she found out, she called. It was like the state or whatever it was to register, and she asked how to do it, and they asked what the name would be, and she's like, "I don't know, Jim's Music," and like, like, so most people go into this like with a plan, like they're gonna like plan out how this happened, but she totally named the store, and and my dad was not necessarily along for the ride. He was kind of he knew the business and stuff, but like she really made it happen, and he would give her the praise too, I think.
Yeah, he knew to let her drive, like let
Yes.
her be the leading force, and he was kind of like right
Yes.
along, like, all right, oh, that's yeah,
Yep.
great, okay, I'm right behind you, I'm doing this, but he was smart enough to let her just kind of take charge in that initial going. So
Exactly. So my mom was 6 months pregnant, I think, at the time. So 6 weeks later, they opened the store. Just so like the first store shop. 2 weeks later, they opened their store, and then 6 weeks later, I was born, and so that was 1986. And from there, like, so I kind of grew up in the business. And like a lot of you kind of talked a lot about small stores, but what's kind of funny is my dad, again, not knowing much about it, he didn't know you could get a business loan, so thought he had to cash flow everything. So he bought some product from the previous owner, but they didn't have enough product. So what's kind of fun is we became, and my mom liked balloons. Balloons is a late 80s, early 90s. That was like a thing, balloon arches for weddings and stuff. So we were Jim's Music and Balloon Connection. So in Escanaba, Michigan, if you wanted balloons or music stuff, we were your shop. And then totally random. And then that kind of expanded. So, and the whole reason we did that was they needed a space. They didn't have product, but you could hang balloons on the wall and show them off. So it took up a lot of space. And what's kind of neat is they did the whole like buy one set of strings, replace it with two. They did that for a while. We expanded because there weren't a lot of services. We used to do rental wedding signs. And one of my proudest ones I was just telling Donovan about was we used to rent out singing telegrams and belly dancers. So the belly dancers was kind of the good one. And then as I got older, we did gorillograms. So singing gorillograms, and that helped me. Yeah, through high school, that's what I would do. I would go to places, deliver balloons, and monkey around with people, and just
Oh my gosh.
goof. So I had a
Man,
very
your parents were on that grind, man. There's no doubt about it. They were like, whatever it takes to keep food on the
we
table, the
can make
lights
money.
on,
Yeah,
putting our kid in a gorilla suit. Yeah, we're doing it. We're
yep,
doing
that's it.
it.
So
Do you
I
still
mean,
have that gorilla suit?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I got a couple of them. So man, that's
Does
the
your wife
memories
Mandy
right
ever
there.
ask you to bring that back out for special times?
Not yet. She might now. Can monkey around.
You have four
But
kids. You guys need to be careful about
we're
the monkeying
fine.
around thing.
Yeah. Very true. But
Okay, sorry. Well, get me off
no,
that.
you're good. Yeah, right. So I grew up I learned guitar eventually, not a good guitar player, but I think I was a pretty good teacher. I used to have like 65 students a week. So I was like hitting it and like that was cash money. And like as a high school kid, that was fantastic. Like I was doing great. Went to school for business because I saw how hard my dad struggled and worked. And my parents, like you said, they grinded. Like their way to make it work was to just put more hours, put more time, just really like get to it.
Yep.
And so when we opened our second store, in 2002. And I always like laugh, like we did so wrong sometimes because it took us 16 years to open the second store, right? And then all of a sudden, like 8 years, we were like, oh, we can do this. Let's open three more. Like it was not a great. I wouldn't recommend opening more stores like that.
Same.
Yeah, right. Like the joke is if you have too much money, right? That's when you start
Right.
to think about it. It's like, oh my gosh, like so much easier with less stores. So, but there was 10,000 people, and in our town, like if you wanted to go to the big city, Marquette, that's the biggest city in Upper Michigan. They have 20,000 people, which isn't huge for most, but that was like the big city. So we went there, and then a couple of years later, we're like, oh, we can do this. So we opened up another store in Iron Mountain of 6,000, 7,000 people now. So we were dominating that triangle, all 40,000 people in the UP.
With multiple stores.
Multiple stores. Well, and I say that because, God, what you said is so true. It's like, man, it was a shoestring budget because we didn't have money to like pay for things. Like, so you just had to figure it out. And so but my big thing in the business was always like, I have shiny object syndrome. So like if there's a shiny object, like I'm going to get distracted by it. And we can talk about it after, but like my big thing was like I had to set up things that were automated that I didn't have to remember to do. Because if I had to remember to do them, eventually they're going to get dropped. Like that's just the way I am.
You and I are really similar in that regard. Like we love chasing new things. It's part of what makes us like if it's part of what makes us who we are. Of course, it's the part of what keeps us moving forward is we're always looking into new things. Yeah. But I'm just like you that I'm not good at being the guy that like, okay, well, every Monday I have to do this. Like if I have something like that, I am looking into I'm either going to automate it, delegate it, or outsource it. Like one or the other. Like unless it's just absolutely like payroll, I had to be done at a specific time, and I did our payroll for gosh, well over a decade, nearly 2 decades, and had missed payroll once, not because we didn't have the money, but because I forgot to do it. And so I had to make that. I had all kinds of alerts, alarms, reminders. I'd made it as simple as I could, but it took everything I had to just make sure that I got that payroll done. But anytime I got bogged down into those types of processes, it kept me from being the creative, like, person out looking for something new to do. Whereas there's other people that love that. There's other people that love knowing, oh man, every other Monday from 9 a.m. to 10:30 a.m., I'm going to be doing payroll processing. I mean, I don't understand it,
Yes.
but there are people that love that. So you're right. Automation or whatever is just such a key for people like you and I that love to experiment and try new things, discover new things. Absolutely.
Absolutely. No, that's such a big part of it. Like I said, we opened up our third store, and then so each one
What
was like
time
five
period
years
roughly
later.
are we talking about that these stores are all opening?
So
What era?
2002. So it took us 16 years for the first. Then 2002 to 2000, we opened our second, and then we're like 5 years later, we're like, oh, this is working. So 2007, we opened the next one, and we're like, all right, we're still doing all right. And what's nice is with that many, with when you have three stores and they're an hour apart, you can still kind of do it all. So I know
Mm-hmm.
my dad, and I was pretty active at this point in the business. I was managing one of the stores, then I moved on to another one, and bouncing around. But like we were doing fine. But the culture and stuff was created through hard work and busting it, and just a lot of driving and stuff. And I was like, I didn't want that long term. Like to make a business profitable, I think you have to, at least when you don't have a lot of people, when your biggest struggle is the people coming in, you have to streamline as much as you can.
Yeah.
So that was such a big deal for us. And then in 2010, a big music store down in Green Bay, Henry's Music closed. They had multiple locations, and so when one of our vendors called us up, and I wanted to stay in the business, and I was told my dad like, hey, if I could stay in it if we open this extra store. Um, in all honesty, I'm glad I did it, but like at the time, thinking back, it's like, oh my gosh. And what we thought was kind of crazy is we were like, well, we're doing a good job here in our small markets. We'll just take what we do and bring it to another area. It's gonna go great, right?
Done
Like,
that. Done that. Yep.
oh
Yep. Had
man,
that thinking.
yep. And like, and I remember the owner was like, the old owner's like, well, he needs $700,000 to do a business like in this area and stuff like that. And we're like, we might have 40,000 or something, but we'll make it work. Like, so like, so we just hoof it, figure it out. At that point, we had dropped the balloon connection, so we were actually a music store fully, which is
Your
good.
parents at that point would have been like, if I had $700,000, I wouldn't
Yeah,
open a
I
music
believe
store. I'd
no.
retire.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I feel bad sometimes. I kept them in it. Like I've always been passionate. I've always like loved the store. Like my dad raised me growing up in it, and like I want to share that with my kids. But I mean, it was such a good experience for me. It's like I tell people I'm not a good dad. I like push my kids to like be involved. Like they're like, go do something else. I'm like, no, you come to work. It's Thursday. You're off school. You got time. Let's clean some instruments. So, but I think it helped make me who I am, which is good. And so I've in 2010 I moved down here thinking like, oh, we're gonna kill it down here. And Green Bay was huge to us, 100,000 people, and they had 8 other music stores, which in
Oh my
hindsight
gosh.
was a lot of music stores for a town that size.
Yeah, because Green Bay
Um,
is not. I mean, famously, it's not a big town.
no, it's
It's
not.
got a football, an NFL franchise, but that's the thing that makes it stand out is that a town that small, and it's also not like it's a small town, but it's the suburb of like some major. Like
No,
it's not. It's just it's. How many
there's
people
like
live in Green Bay?
100,000,
Yeah, it's smaller than
106,000. Yeah.
Springfield. Yeah,
Oh
yeah,
yeah. It's
yeah,
but to us it was the big city. So I mean, it was like, oh, we can make money here. We can definitely make money down there.
yeah,
And I think what it did for us that I would say is like competition is so good. We've got some great competitors in our area, and like as much as I hate the word jealous, but like frustrated at times at kind of their not their success. Like I want to take their success and like jump off of it, but like they've helped us grow a lot because
yeah.
by them doing better, it's forced us to be more innovative, to stay alive and struggle, like to make it. And so I think having great competition helps.
Yeah, I know it's not like, you know, maybe mentally healthy to admit it, but I think being truthful is mentally healthy. I think it's fine to say that we can be envious of our competitors'
Oh
success.
yeah,
You know, I
absolutely.
definitely look at. I mean, I've got so many strong, smart competitors down here in Missouri and Kansas, and I would be completely lying if I didn't say I didn't look at some of the things that like Palin Music does, or Meyer Music does, or even Nodelman Music does up in the St. Louis area, or of course what Music and Arts does. But certainly those other stores I mentioned, and like be envious of some of the things that they're able to do or that they have done. They may or may not feel the same way about what we've done, but regardless, like I look at what they're doing, like, oh gosh, like, Palin's whole web team and web presence, like I look at that and think, oh my gosh, like I would love to have that. I wish that I could do that. Nodelman has done such a great job with similar things, doing like a training session, education sessions, and things online for what's essentially a kind of a small business, 2 location family owned business. Like they've had a lot of success with it. Meyer Music, with the way they've just dominated Kansas City through the school music rental market, and the brilliance of putting together the whole band of angels. I mean, dang man, just I'm definitely envious. Like, envious is probably a better term than jealous, maybe. It
Yeah,
certainly makes you
envious is.
admire and respect what all those people have accomplished, for sure.
And it's funny when you said that, like the things you don't, I think you never realize are the people that are envious of you, because I look at the way you've done your business and structured it, and like it's incredible. Like you have an amazing business, and the way you've expanded, and the way from my perspective, the things that you've done that have been so innovative. I mean, it's inspiring. So I think that goes everywhere. I mean, like our story is pretty. The hardest part about talking about this podcast sometimes was, for me at least, trying to think like, what do we do that's different? Because we had kind of a common journey into the music industry where
Hmm.
we needed a job and stuff, but what sets us apart? And I think the hard part is when the things you want to say that set you apart don't always do that. And so what I mean is, like, we have the best staff. Like saying that, like everyone thinks they have the best staff. I think.
Hmm.
Um, I think that's always a struggle. I think we're constantly growing and striving towards making a better system, a better like store, obviously, a better experience for the customer. But I mean, that's a struggle. I think that the stores that have really done well and defined themselves, like the stores that stand out to me, they've got like I envision they have a really good culture, and like they have a good image and stuff, and that's so hard, I think you don't realize it until you get there, maybe. Like on the way, I've improved a lot of the things we do, and I'm getting us better. But the only time I recognize that is when I look at like old stuff I made. Yeah.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Oh, totally. That last episode, the most recent episode before yours with Michael Santander, we talked about this phenomenon of chasing the horizon.
I
That
listened
so
to,
many
yeah.
times as entrepreneurs, we're always looking ahead. We're always looking. I want to be up there, and sometimes ahead is something that like we envision in our brains we want to see. Sometimes ahead is because we're looking at a competitor. We might be looking at a Palin Music or a Hyde Music or White House Music or whatever, and think like, I want to do what they're doing, and so we pursue that but the problem is the horizon is never an ending point, right? So like we chase it, chase it, chase it, and we'll never get it. And that feeling can be very frustrating and demoralizing over time. But it's not until you stop and look back at how far you've come, how much ground you've traveled, how many things you've implemented, how much you've learned, that you realize that it wasn't a wasted effort. But yeah, I think we all feel that way, and I think most entrepreneurs never get to the point where they feel like, yeah, I've achieved it. This is what I'm looking to do. Like, I think that almost never happens. And I think we also have to recognize too, like our starting points, where we're starting point to where we are now, and other businesses. And I'm just going to name the folks that you and I are in same markets with, because I think we know those better than I
Yeah,
would, naming someone
absolutely.
else. And we're not saying anything derogatory, although we might. We'll see. But we might talk crap about some of these people. We'll find out. But those folks from Palin, they may not have started at the same point. I may have started back here, and here's where I'm at, and they may have started over here, and so they're up here. It's we're just starting at different points, and we have to kind of take that in stride. And you're going to win some, and you're going to lose some. Like it's just the way it goes. So I totally get that. So your stores, just again for people that may not be familiar, so you're primarily in smaller markets. I mean, with like, gosh, the biggest one being 100,000, but then the next one being, what did we say, 20,000 was Marquette,
20,000.
and then from then on it gets smaller, basically.
40,000 people in the UP. Yep.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. In that entire area, there's only 40,000 people. 4 locations. They're essentially like combo shops and band rental, repair, and lesson stores, right? That's basically, we're doing guitar sales primarily, plus and well, combo. We're doing sound. So you're not doing
installs.
like acoustic pianos or anything like that.
We
Do you
are. Oh
do
yeah.
installs?
Yep. Installs. We've done acoustic pianos. We still do used acoustic pianos, but not new. I mean, there's just not the market for it for us.
Yeah,
We do installs. So like, I mean, we'll do a wide variety of things, and it's been harder to focus down. I think it's easier to expand than it is to contract
yeah,
with
yeah.
that stuff. So we've always done installs up north. We used to have a division that would just do live sound. We did live sound for like local markets, like the fairs and stuff like that, just stages and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But we've pulled away from that more because the time, they're just the resources and the people, having the people, and that's we have the same struggles I think everyone else has. We just have less people to work to pick from a
Yeah,
lot of times. So, but I don't know. It's been well, I think you're right. I think everything you said very eloquently, but like the we all have you don't look back and see. I'll say this, like the good, I think a true entrepreneur is kind of always pushing forward. They're never really happy with where they can appreciate where they are, but they're still always trying to push forward. I don't know
mm-hmm.
anyone that's not. Um, and I wouldn't want to be that way. That would be hard for me to stop, to slow down. You
Mm-hmm.
get used to a set level of running, and I think to slow down, it's does that make sense?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
yeah, significant, yeah, activity level or whatever. So I don't know. I think
I think
that's
it can be, as you get older, I think it can be, you can become more comfortable, especially if you've had some amount of success, and maybe, maybe like that level of competitiveness may start to like kind of roll off. But at that point, it's probably time to make sure you've got some youth in your organization, and find people that want to like kind of carry it forward and keep it moving, because otherwise you're going to end up becoming stagnant, because the marketplace is just changing all around us, and it's changing. It's, honestly, it's been changing, it's been accelerating the pace of change, probably ever since the industrial revolution. Really, I mean, like, so I think before the industrial revolution, like, probably the marketplace wasn't changing much. Like a marketplace from 100 years before would probably function very similar to the way that it did, like up until the 1840s, 1850s. But then the industrial revolution kicks in and starts to change things, and then you just look at like the technological advances that we've made just in the last, really just the last even 100 years. It's night and day different, from where we are today. And I think we're in like another kind of industrial revolution now with the rise of AI. Like, it's going to change things even more, and even more quickly. So that landscape is just constantly changing all around us, and we have to adapt or we end up getting left behind.
it's a cliche, but I agree with you. I think the only constant is change. And one thing you said I think is really true, and it's something I'm starting to realize is I feel like I'm getting to. I know when I started, I remember thinking like, "Oh my gosh, Dad, you were so dumb. Why didn't you do this way or whatever?" Right? Like I had no clue. I had tons of opinions when I'm 18 and stuff, and trying to really like change the business. And then I got to the point where it's like I start to realize, oh, that makes sense why he did it at that time that way. So
Mm-hmm.
I always say I'm wrong, but I feel like I'm at the point where now I feel like I can see. I know I'm not. I'm smart enough to see the changes, what we need to change. I like what is it? Competent. There's like the 4 stages, right?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
kind of know I go over. So I'm like in stage 3. I'm not there yet where like
You're
I know
consciously competent.
consciously competent. That's what I
Yeah,
am. Thank you.
yeah,
Thank you. Yes.
yeah.
So I feel like I can recognize some of the problems. I don't know all the solutions, but I can. I know we have a place to go. Versus where I was before, I was totally unconsciously incompetent. I mean, like just like totally there. So I feel like what you said so true is like, and I feel like my dad will be in the business forever. Like he loves it. He loves what he does. He just, and I feel like he's been amazing because he's given me the freedom to run more and more of the company, and he's allowed he like step back and like let me run with it, but he still likes to go in and like do his thing, which is nice. It's nice having him to like chat with and to be a kind of a sounding board. I think that's
Mm-hmm.
so important to have that sounding board in our like and you can probably relate to this, but the higher up you go, I think, in your company, the less people you maybe should talk to or you can talk to about certain things.
Mm-hmm.
But it's nice having someone that you can relate to and share your troubles with, because
Yeah.
sharing with employees isn't not probably recommended.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Well, it depends on the trouble, right?
yes,
Yeah,
yes,
I've
absolutely.
always been maybe a little bit of an overshare, and I've always been very comfortable generally sharing most things, especially with staff. We tend to be pretty transparent, but you're right. There are certain things you're like, yeah, you can't share that. And so having people around you that are can be confidants, and then also having like a team that is comfortable speaking up to you and telling you when you're wrong and doing all that like that is so difficult for them to do, but it's so important to have a team of people around you that when they think you're screwing up that they're going to step up and say something. And to me, that's just the ultimate form of showing that you care for someone, that you care for a company, that you care for people, was when you are willing to like put yourself out there to speak up against something. And I often tell that to even customers, like many of our school customers, like I just, plead them like, hey, if we're doing something wrong, like I will not be upset that you tell me. As a matter of fact, I'll probably be so thankful I might cry. Like, I mean, that is just the highest form of relationship when someone can do that. So yeah, certainly to have a team of people in your company or a person in your company that you can do that with. I think a lot of us use our spouses for that too. And there's a certain value for that. I definitely talk with my spouse about work stuff, and I value her input as being someone who's knowledgeable, but also kind of slightly removed from it. So that's really handy. But having people just inside the business that you can talk to about is critical. I don't know how one would do it if you didn't have that. So I don't think
No,
one
I
could do it to the scale that we do things if you don't have those people, for sure.
absolutely. The only reason our company has done as well as it has, I think, is because I've been blessed and lucky enough to hire people smarter than me and better than me at the things. And like you just said, you kind of nailed it. It was exactly how I feel. Like if you can have people below you feel comfortable complaining to you about what you're doing and telling you where they think you're doing it wrong, like that's a great staff. Like the biggest thing is we always say like you can't teach people to care, right? I mean, they can over time, but like I will take the better personality, the better the value system set I believe they have over like what their knowledge is, because we can train the knowledge, but I can't train people to care a lot of times.
Hmm.
Um, maybe you can. I don't know if there's a trick to it, but I haven't figured that one out yet. But
Yeah. I don't think
I
you can.
mean,
I think you can definitely train some of the knowledge. I think sometimes, like especially if when you're getting to a spot you want to hire people better than you, then you got to find people that already have the knowledge that you don't have.
yes,
Like when we
that's
hired
true.
Amanda, like we just hired someone that had an MBA, that had all this background experience and education. Like she came in knowing more than I did. I couldn't train her for that, so she had to learn that. But I think developing that culture where people can speak up, I think that's a relevant conversation for us to have. So I know when I first came to my company, of course, what was then Springfield Music, and I've made it clear over the years just the love and appreciation I have for Lee Coates, the former owner of Springfield Music, and I mean, just the relationship that we continue to have today has been so wonderful for me and meaningful for me. But when I got there, when Lee was younger, that dude was full of like piss and vinegar and aggression, and he was a self-made man. Basically, he'd been extremely successful. All through his own like grit and tenacity and perseverance, and he was a nice guy, but he'd had a temper, and he could be difficult to talk to. And most people that would get around him, because he has just such a strong personality, um, would just sort of like they
Bend.
wouldn't want to anger him. It's their boss,
Yeah.
so they would just try to not anger him. If they knew that something would make him upset, they just wouldn't tell him. And so he was kind of filled with around with a bunch of yes people, more or less. And when I came in, like I mean, he and I didn't hit it off in the beginning. I was his consumer rep at first, and we didn't hit it off at first. But I just wasn't going to be bullied by him, mainly just because at the time, especially, I just didn't. Honestly, I didn't even need this account. So like the whole time I was like always weathering like, do I even want this person to like be a consumer dealer? Like they're hard to work with. Like this is the whole time I was kind of weighing my options here. It's when I came to work here, I kind of had that same, I guess that mindset just sort of carried over. And I remember he would get so mad when we would talk sometimes, but I would tell him like, hey, Lee, I would not be serving you well if I just told you the things that you wanted to hear. Like you need me to tell you what I think and what I think you need to hear, because we'll never be as successful as we can be if I just like, just bow down to whatever you say. And to his credit, he would always go, you're right, you're right. But it was a very difficult culture to do that with. So I'd been very intentional ever since then about trying to create a culture where people can speak up. And with that, you have to be more tolerant. You have to be more patient. You have to allow people the chance to express themselves. You have to recognize that at all times you're always the boss. And if you're someone like you or I, where we don't maybe really take that all that seriously, that it's not a thing that like, we just like strut around with our uh, chest puffed out or whatever, we can lose. I know I can lose sight of that. I don't like think of myself as being the owner or the boss, but I always am to those people. And that many people can be nervous talking to you, which to me I feel like, why would anyone be nervous talking to me? Like I'm a delight, like, I'm
But
so easy to talk to. Why
total,
would that
yeah.
be? Why would anyone be nervous by that? But you have to respect that they might. You have to respect that they may not have great ideas, but they may have great ideas. You've got to listen through it, help them think through those things. You've got to create an environment and culture where people feel that it's safe to speak up and that they will be listened to. And if they're wrong, they won't be punished or penalized. And if they're right, they'll be thanked. And I think the other side of that is when you're wrong as an owner or manager, you've got to admit to it. Like you got to admit, like, hey, I was wrong. You were right. Next time we get into one of those situations that's like this, and you have more knowledge about this than I do, and I'm doing the same thing. Will you remind me of this day so that we don't make the same mistake? Like, I just think those things are so critical if you're trying to build that culture where people can speak up. Is that how
So I
you've
got
done it?
notes. Oh, I wish. I wish I no, first off, I want to not let you gloss over Amanda. So you kind of like played off like Amanda's really smart. We hired someone great. But like to me, Amanda's more than that. Like you've got someone that like there's a million people that can do what she does on the controlling, like the knowledge end. She's got lots of knowledge, but it's accounting knowledge. That's something that you can pay for. But
Mm-hmm.
what Amanda
Mm-hmm.
has that somehow you find like the best people for this. I don't know how you do it, but like you find people that care and compassionate, and then you like instill these values in them, like that you're a great guy and that you're going to listen to them, and then you do that, and then they trust you, and then they bust their ass for you, and like they just bend over backwards to try to make you happy. And like I mean that as a compliment because it's you have an amazing skill at that. I think that is the secret to being successful is find the right people. I know one thing we always talked about in our company was like it a lot of times it takes a different person to start the business than it does to build the business and like
Mm-hmm.
take it to that next level. You said something before where it's like we all start at different places. I know I can't picture struggling and going through what my dad did the first few years when he first opened, like expanding, doing all that stuff. And I, I hope that my kids can take the business much farther than I ever could. I hope I can, of course, grow it a ton still, but I think that's so important. And I think the other thing that you brought up that was really, really good is like having employees that can argue with you. That is my favorite thing. Like, and the favorite thing in the world is when I can have an employee like feel comfortable enough to tell me I'm wrong about something. It gives him first, it gives me the chance to admit I might be, which makes me look great, which is
Mm-hmm.
great. And then also, like that means that they care enough to complain, which is a hard thing. And the worst possible thing, in my opinion, is when you like do a sale or something and the employee's like, yeah, I didn't think that would work. Like after the sale's done, it's like, and whether it was successful or not, they're like, they got some complaint, and it's like, man, I wish you would just voiced it before. Like we could
Yeah.
have. That's the absolute worst to me. It's like when they're like, oh, I didn't think it would work, but you're the boss. Like that doesn't
Right.
do anyone any good. So
Yeah, I
I
hate
mean,
that. I don't like it when people say that, and they don't say it to me anymore, or really rarely ever have. I just can't stand it if people just say, "Well, you're the
yes,
boss." Like,
yeah, that's not
oh,
what I want.
it
Like
makes my skin crawl. Like, I just really don't like it.
that's the
And
worst.
to be clear, it's not that we have to have like 100% buy-in on everything we do. It's fine for some people to be like, I'm skeptical. I've said my piece though, and let's
Yeah,
move forward. We've
absolutely.
got a manager in St. Louis, Dan Hughes, who can be like that. He's whereas you and I have shiny object syndrome, we love change, we love all that stuff. Dan's the opposite. Dan's the guy that when you need something, hey, this needs to be done this way all the time, every time. He is the king of consistency of routines. It's a genius he has for that. Things I can't do. But the corollary with that means he often just is resistant to
Yes.
change and new ideas. To his credit, though, he will speak up about why he doesn't think they're a good idea. And then if they're proven to be right over time, he will say, hey, I thought this wasn't going to be great, but it turns out it is. Great example for this year. One of our big initiatives we're working on is we're implementing culture by design. So we're being very intentional to upgrade and improve our company's culture. Not because we think we have a bad culture, we think we have a good culture, but we think it could be even better. And so we rolled it out in our annual meeting with the leadership team, and Dan shared, like, he wasn't he just when he first kind of was presented with all this stuff, he was like, I don't know why this is like our main focus for this year. Like, surely there's other things more important for us to be doing. But after a couple of months of executing it and seeing it, he chimed in. He was like, hey, I was skeptical in the beginning, but this is actually really quite good. Like, I'm seeing the change in my people. I'm seeing the change in the organization. Like, this is really, really handy. And so people that are willing to speak their mind, willing to admit when they were wrong, willing to provide feedback, all that is like just absolutely critical, I think, for our success. But they got to do it all along the way. They can't just sit there Monday morning quarterback in at the end go, yeah, I knew that wasn't going to work. That's
And
not helpful.
obvious,
That's just
yeah,
being a
and
dick.
yes. And obviously, I was going to say, just like you did, like time and place. Like, I want them to respectfully tell me away from other people. I don't want them to yell in the middle of me. Like, that's dumb. Like, that's a totally different experience than what we're going for. So, I mean, you said better than I could. I think
Well,
that's
it depends to
exactly
me.
what it is.
When we're having our leadership meetings, yeah, go ahead and speak up in front of the whole group. It's fine with me. I don't mind about that. But you're right. Like, if I'm pulling all the staff together and like I'm trying to, like, this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
Now, the caveat to that would be if I caught them off guard. If I caught that other leader off guard and they didn't know this was coming and I sprung it on them, to ask them to not provide any feedback until afterwards might be unfair to them. Um, and so I think they just have to really think through the right way to say it. So if I didn't do a good job of getting them on board with something important beforehand, and then I bring it out to like the team at that location, they think it's a problem. I think they have to find, how do I ask this question without it coming across as being like not on board or that I disagree, but that I can, show or at least get some clarity on what may have been overlooked or hasn't been thought through. And there's certainly a tone that we can use to ask those questions that can make that better. And I don't view those as being not on board, but I certainly have had people in the past that I just know, like, man, if that person starts with the way that they're going to start, like if they're going to start like, well, what are you going to do about this? Well, that won't work because of blah, 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 blah. Like, if that kind of reaction is very negative. But if people are instead asked like, hey, I think this is a really interesting idea. Have you thought about what we would do if this happens? Like,
Yeah.
that's totally fair, to ask really the same question, just phrase it in a different way.
100% agree. It's so situational. It makes it hard. One thing I think I've always tried to do, and I think you do too, and maybe I'm wrong, but it is, I guess I try to always look at like maybe like I'm the first problem. Like if there's a problem with something, I tend to look at like, boy, I probably did something wrong to get us here, and not in like a really derogatory sense, but first before I like blame people for being dumb, I'm like, it's probably my fault that I did not give them enough training on this stuff. I clearly didn't explain well enough before I yell. I'm like, you, things that are obvious to me, like because I've grown up in this business, it's so, some things are like just blatantly obvious. And I think anyone should know that, but then I forget that they don't have my experiences and that,
Yeah.
so I guess to me, that's a big thing is I feel like I always try first to be like, well, I look to myself as the problem first. Not that they didn't screw up or excuses them, but like, how could I have fixed it or caused this situation not to have occurred?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I mean, I used to get frustrated with our leadership team. I'd want to make some change or improvement, and then I would just come in like, "All right, I want to do this thing," and they would push back, and I couldn't get people on board. And I just finally realized, like, wait a minute, I got convinced to do this because I saw some presentation, or I read
Yes.
a book, or I listened to a podcast or whatever. And I spent like probably hours like soaking up all this knowledge, and it got me like real hyped and excited. And then I just came in here and just dumped it on them as we're doing this without
Word vomit.
any
Yeah.
thought of how I'd pitch it to them. I didn't sell it to them. And so now I've gotten good. I've realized that one of the key ways to galvanize the team, to rally the team around a project, is I've got to pitch it and present it to them just like they were a board of directors or something like that. I'll often will have a slide deck, like I'll have a plan. Like when we did this culture by design implementation, I spent time building out like the whole reason why, and then I had to also build out what it was, and like it was a whole thing that I had to put together to make this work. I knew from my experience that I just couldn't come in being the owner and saying, "Hey, we're going to do this," and expect everyone to be like, "Hell yeah, let's go." Like they
Yeah.
just weren't, they weren't going to they don't, for whatever respect they may have for me, whatever, they just don't trust me more than their own judgment. And they don't trust me over the things that to them just sound like more work. And I've got to sell them and convince them. And that honestly, when I first kind of had that epiphany, it sort of annoyed me because I don't feel like I have a ton of ego wrapped up into what I do. But I did feel like, man,
Good
I'm the boss
salesperson.
here. Like I've been here longer than almost all of you. Like I've been successful. Like just trust me. But then the minute I started thinking that, I was like, oh, wait a minute. I don't want them to trust me. Like I want them to question me if they think I'm wrong. Like shit, those two things kind of go hand in hand. Like, okay, I got to pitch this. I got to pitch it better. I got to present it to them. And because I do want them to like dig into it and pick it apart if they think it's wrong. One of our rules that we have at Ernie Williamson Music, though, is that when I'm pitching an idea, you can't pick it apart in the first few minutes. You got to like dream with me. You got to like get into the spirit of it and try to get into like why you see it, why I see it as being appealing. So you can't just from the get-go just start shooting it down. Like you have to let the thing live a little bit, let it sprout, let it grow a little
Breathe.
bit. We
There
can
you go.
kill it if we need to
Yeah.
later,
Yeah.
but like let's just let it sort of form a bit. And then once we kind of all right, I can see why you're into that. I could see all that. Then if we have concerns, I think it's a bad idea, then we could strangle it if we have to. But you can't just strangle it while I'm still trying to birth it. So sorry, that was a weird metaphor.
We That's a fantastic metaphor. No, wait till it's born. I got you.
Right.
There's nothing bad that can happen then.
Right.
So when I mean, again, like I feel like there's a lot of like good nuggets that you're bringing up of for anyone listening. I think there's so much with what you just said. Like it's not worth it a lot of times to have an idea and push it onto your staff, because whether it's intentional or not, they will fight for you to not have it work. Like it's too much work. I would never want to do some new thing without having some buy-in. And then again, to me, if they're not bought in, that means I did not sell it well enough to them.
Mm-hmm.
That's usually what it is. Or the other thing is, it takes, like you said, those type of people that hate change, want that consistency. They have to like warm up to the idea. I've learned to pitch my dad an idea, and knowing every time, like he will initially just kind of shoot it down or like just be brutal on it, but then he'll feel bad about that, but about being brutal. And like 10 minutes later, he'll call me back and he'll be like, all right, I thought about it, and like that makes sense, or like let's do this.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like as I grow in my position, I'm learning that life is better when you have everyone rowing in the same direction, like that same cliche. Okay, but I mean, it's so much better to not force your ideas on your staff, but treat it like a sales game where you're trying to win, like get them invested in your vision or see the vision, because then they'll help you pull it forward versus you constantly trying to like harp on them. I hate
Yeah.
harping on people. Like
Yeah.
it's no fun.
It's no
So
fun. It's no fun. Yeah, they got to see what's in it for them. They got to see
yes.
why it's important and why they benefit from it for sure. I think that's one of the things, like you'd mentioned before about like just the quality of people that we have in our organization at Ernie Williamson, and that you have in your company as well. And you're right. I mean, I'm really fortunate that I've got these people, and some of the folks were here before I got here. Paul Schmidt, who's the head of our repair tech, one of the most invested, dedicated people you're ever likely to meet. He was here before I got here. But then many of the other people I've been able to bring along. And I think a big part of why I've been able to get those types of people, and these are people that that are passionate and committed and will work hard. I think they're working hard not so much for me as much as it is for themselves, because I want to. I'm hiring the kind of people that they want to win, they want to succeed, they want to be a part of something that's bigger than what they are, and they see that as a way to express that capability in themselves through this organization. And so I think what I'm good at is finding those kinds of those kinds of people that want to win, that want to succeed. And
But
then when those people are around, I just appreciate them, and also I give them a lot of leeway, and I trust their judgment, because a lot of times they know more than I know, especially now. Like I promise you, Misty Christek knows way more about what's going on with like the inner workings of like our lesson program than I do. She definitely knows more about what's going on with our location in Kansas City that she manages by being up there only 2 days a week than I do. So I just trust her judgment on those things. And then sometimes you get lucky and you're able to get someone that just has skills and ability that's even outpaces what you've seen. Misty's a good example of that. We hired Misty as a part-time accounts receivable person for us. She had no music background. She had a degree in park and recreational management, I think. We just needed someone to do AR. And so she started doing that, and she was very efficient and effective at it. So then we gave her a little bit more to do. And then we had a lesson coordinator at one point that was a wonderful person, but she was just a mess on the administrative side of the lesson program. And so I was like, I'm going to just have Misty jump in and help, because Misty's so good at like just keeping organized and stuff. And Misty just cleaned that thing up. And then Misty really took to it. And so then at one point she was like, can I just take over the lesson program? And so she's done that. And most people, it blows their mind that at our entire company, Misty runs the entire lesson program out of Springfield. We don't have a lesson coordinator per location. We have Misty that does all of it. She's just so amazing to have that. And that was a skill that she had that was unforeseen in the beginning. And then with Amanda, yeah, I mean, anyone who knows me knows, like, the gratitude I have for having Amanda on the team. And that comes from hiring someone with the education, the skills that we needed, knew that like through the interview process that culturally she'd be a good fit. She was, and I could just sort of tell that just through, I mean, she'll famously tell the story of like our first conversation. She applies through Indeed, her number's on her resume. I text her, I'm like, hey, are you able to do a quick chat? This is Donovan from Springfield Music. Are you able to do a quick chat? She has like a newborn baby in the house, and she's thinking that like I'm going to, schedule something. So she says yes. I just immediately call. Like I meant like right now, is she able for a chat? She's thinking like,
that's me.
we'll arrange something. So she takes her kid, throws it in the crib. Baby starts crying. She shuts the door, goes to the other side of the house. And then she and I proceed to have this hour-long conversation, which I'm oblivious that she's got this newborn at home, and I have no clue. I'm sitting on my front porch of the house here. I've got a cigar, and I think I'm got like a bourbon or something, because it's like a Friday afternoon or something. And like, I'm just like having this leisurely conversation, like kind of getting to know her. And like oh man. And I didn't find that out until later, but she just was that kind of person that she was just like dedicated, committed, like focused. And then so during that process, I realized like, man, she and we have like great communication, and like she's very knowledgeable, she's very passionate, she's got a good sense of humor, which is important to me. And so I just felt like she was the right cultural fit. There was a lot of people that had the skill set that she had, the education she had, but things just clicked with her and were easier. We hired her, and I forgot to even ask if she had a music background. So it was her first day training, and we were going through the accounts payable process. And I told her, like, don't worry that you don't know the difference between a cornet and a clarinet. You'll figure it out eventually. And she's like, I told you I was like an honor band French horn player, right? I'm like, oh, no, I had no idea you played a musical instrument.
Nice.
But then over time, she went from being essentially like our controller to really just being my partner. in the business. And that just became through because she's got this incredible intellect and drive, and she's very competitive. You've seen that. I mean, we've
Yep,
played on the rooftop of
absolutely.
your
Yeah.
rental in Anaheim where you had
Yes.
cornhole, and
Yeah.
she's out there trying to
She's
win.
win.
But she's very she's very dedicated and driven. And then what I saw in her is this person who could be a good leader, who is smart and dedicated and driven, but just needed a vehicle. She'd been in banking and finance basically all of her life. She'd always been like the number cruncher in the background, but I could just see like, man, she could be somebody. And so like, seeing that and putting her in those positions to win made her thrive and successful, and made her the successful leader that she is today. And I'm really proud of what she's done and really thankful to have her on the team. But I think that might be my number, other than being very perseverant and very persistent. Um, my
It's your
skills, like I can
superpower.
find other people and I'm totally willing to let them shine and let them do it. Totally willing to let them do the work.
And and like keep wanting to interrupt because I'm like, you're stealing all my thunder. Like when you talk about that stuff, it's exactly what you do. I feel like, and again, it's something I want to model for my people. I think there's a lot of places that will find people and they're like, oh, that's a great person, but without the empowering, and I think that's something that Amanda would agree to is like the fact that you empowered and trusted someone to essentially off the bat based on what you knew about her and the way she performed. Empowering is the biggest part because people want to win, and if you give them the ability to win, giving them the the I guess just setting them up the way you have, I think it
Yep.
allows them to take work off of you and to just have the business explode. We
Well, it
do the same
allows
thing.
them to also shine.
Of
It allows
course.
them to show that, I mean, because that's what Lee did for me. He allowed
Yes,
me to like sink my teeth into it and to drive this business forward, but he also allowed me to have the spotlight. He didn't, I didn't sit there and like have success and then he would just take the limelight for himself. He would let me have it, and then when
praise you.
he was never involved much in like NAM and stuff like that. But when we would do local business things, he would always, shower praise on me and stuff like that. My dad did that to me too. My dad always like, I've always felt like my dad put me on a pedestal and then made me live up to it. My dad always talked about how
Yeah,
smart I was and caring and everything and wise and mature for my age, which is probably not true. He's just saying that so that like I start to
it
act that
works.
way, like,
Yes.
oh, okay. You tell me that I'm like a worthless little piece of shit, then I'm going to act like that. But if you tell me that like, oh, you're so mature beyond your years, you're so wise, you make such good decisions, like I am that. I
Yeah.
wish he would told me that I had, great hair and was thin.
Stunning physique. Yeah, there you go. I mean, it's funny to me the similarities in the stories in the business. My dad was that way to me. He's always been so encouraging. He's given me like you don't let an 18-year-old manage a store. You don't let people like I've made so many wrong decisions, but he has given me the freeway. And like because of that, I've always wanted to like make him proud to like I wanted to be like you kind of said, like I want to make sure the business is successful because
Yep.
he's trusted me with it. When someone trusts you with stuff like that, you good people, that's what they do, I think. So
Yep.
that is totally relatable. I mean, that's again right on the head. Like you nailed it. I don't know. I think everything comes back to picking the right people. Like if you pick the right people, your job is easy. It
Well,
really is.
sometimes, we're dealing with this right now in Springfield. Sometimes you don't pick the right people. And so
Yeah.
then you got to move on. And that's
Yes.
a hard thing to do. And so we had a store manager position come up in Springfield. Hired a guy who's a really nice guy. Honestly, would be a good salesperson, but he's just not what we need for a store manager. And so we had to have that candid conversation with him. Like, this just isn't working out. And we felt bad because he moved from multiple states away to take this job. But man, it's just not the right fit. And so we've told him like, stay here till you find something or until we find someone else, because he's not killing us or anything like that. It's just not what we're looking for. But making that decision to part ways with him, that was hard. Like, that was part of me just wanted to not do it, to let him just like keep working there, because like I said, he's a nice guy, like he's good with customers, the employees like him. uh and like it would just would have been easier to let that happen. But I just knew that, man, that's the wrong thing to do. It's the wrong thing to do for the business. It's really even the wrong thing to do for the people in that location. Like, and it's honestly, it's the wrong thing for him. Like, this guy could be successful. He just needs to be doing a role that he can succeed at. And so sometimes you're lucky and you hire great people like Paul and Misty and Amanda and those folks. Other times you don't, and you just gotta politely part ways. So
So we do the, when you probably do, we do the hire slow, fire fast in theory. But to be honest, I'm not very good at taking a lot of stock in interviews. Everyone can be nice for 20 minutes, or they can
yep,
like, you never see like a picture, you never see a real person, in my opinion,
yep,
until they like have a few weeks on the job, a week or two on the job.
yep,
I think one thing that we've done, you brought up how your lesson coordinator was an AR. Our lesson coordinator started as my assistant. I had another assistant that grew, and she runs all of our marketing, our advertising, graphic design, and she's a million times better than I could be. And like, I think we've gone through a bunch of other people to get to that point, and I struggle, like I imagine you do, with letting people go fast and or things. So I'm curious kind of how you guys do it. What we did is and we might have talked about, but like we set like 30, 60, 90-day goals. And I always want people to kind of get themselves out of the job more than me fire them. I want to have like structure. I'm saying all this because you're probably going to say the same thing and beat me to it. But I mean, I want to have that structure laid out ahead of time so that they're like, this isn't for me, because I don't like firing people. Can you
mm-hmm.
tell me what's your process? What do you do?
I like your idea. I like what you're talking about, having like 30, 60, 90-day goals. I think with us, we try to be very candid in the beginning that, like, hey, we are hiring you for this position because we need it done and we need it done well. If we didn't, we wouldn't bring you on. Uh, the reality with interviewing is we haven't figured out a way to make sure the interviews are foolproof either way. So as you come on board, like, the proof is going to be in the pudding whether this is the right fit for you. If we're the right fit for you and you're the right fit for us. And if you're not, this is how the conversations will look. So for us, I just basically start to tell them essentially from the beginning, um, if they're not doing well, what that's going to look like. So if you start to hear these things from us, that means things aren't quite right. And so, like, if you're starting to see that we're popping over quite a bit, and are coming into your location more than normal, if you're seeing that, like, other people, your other managers are getting things done, we're asking you to stay behind after a meeting and we're talking more about it. These are all like red flags that things aren't right. And then if we get to a time where things aren't right, and we feel like that it's just not the right fit, then we'll part ways. And the way we'll part ways will kind of vary, but assuming everyone's still doing their best, then this is how we usually do it. And we tend to do it the way we're doing it right now, which is you can look for something, I'll look for someone, whoever finds the thing first wins, and like we can leave. And I think most people appreciate that level of candidness. And then we just tell them during that time period, like, you still have to work hard, like you're still like just know, like, you still have to account for your time here. But most people just appreciate that respect, that I really haven't had much of a problem. Every once in a while we have that conversation, people then for whatever have a hard time with it, and then I just have to like straight up fire them and cut them loose. But that's honestly really, really rare. Most people appreciate being handled respectfully and kindly, that they respond well to that. I love the idea of like the benchmarks and the goals. I just know for me, I wouldn't be able to stick through to that and monitor that closely. So for me, it wouldn't work, but I think for other people, it could work very, very, very well.
I think it works for the record, like just to kind of tap on that, the way you're doing it, that I love what you're doing after the fact. The hard part would be, I love everything after. The hard part would be getting the training into to make sure they understand their position and roles and stuff. So for me, giving them, in my head at least, what we do is we always give them a 30, 60, 90-day review, and we have specific goals for each one. And what I think has been really beneficial is it gives them 90 days to correct these things, and they're
Yeah.
specific enough that it makes it really easy to correct those habits versus being like, I I would struggle with being like, oh, I don't think you're doing a good job because you're just not moving as fast as everyone else, whatever it would be. Like having specific metrics, and we've talked about metrics before. I'm like a metric Nazi, but I couldn't do it myself like you, but I can set the goals, and then I can have the manager at the store review review them with the employee, because I don't
Hmm.
know about you, I found out that if I tell other people to do it, they kind of have to. Where if I'm like, oh, I'll do it, like I forget or I'll
Right.
get pulled away or well, it slips through the cracks. So the way I've learned to fix myself a little bit has been delegating those responsibilities that are maybe tedious or like that's their requirement onto these other people. And for us, we do that through like I have their responsibilities be to handle a set list of things that they do, and that's been working out well for us. But I love what you do, like with the corrective end. I love telling them how they're doing it wrong. For us, I would say you're doing it wrong because you're not doing this, this, and this. But I like what you're saying, where it's like, if we talk to you a lot, if we do like these things, that's a really smart way to communicate with them, and that's
We
something
try
we
to
should
just
probably
be
get better at.
candid about it, but I definitely like your system probably better. I just know that this is how we operate. And I think it's because, we have a corporate office that's outside of the retail stores. We're not in the stores a lot to do that. We don't have like a district manager. We don't have someone who's like responsible for all the stores. It's just all of those of us in leadership that like take charge of doing stuff. And so if we had like a district manager, we might have a little bit more of a defined process, but I've got stuff to do, Amanda's got stuff to do, Misty's got stuff to do.
Yes.
So like we just sort of need people that can like get in the fold. We'll work alongside you, show you what to do, but you're either going to get up to speed
You're
with
gonna
us
take it,
really
yeah.
quick and move forward, or you're not going to make it and we got to cut you loose because like we don't really have time for this.
You
I
need
do think your
proactive
system's
people.
better for most people. But I think even with having that goal system like what you're describing, there's times where like you can just tell someone's just not the right fit,
Yep.
and even if they're like they might be hitting the objectives you set, but man, they're just still it's just not right. Like they're not getting along with the people around them, or they're whatever the situation is, and you have to sometimes deal with that. But I think that the way that you're advocating and the way that you guys do it, I think is definitely much smarter. For us, I think we're just evaluating, are they able to like pick up and do the things that we do. We're totally happy to train them and show them as we go along. We do have a training plan and
Yeah.
program, but it's sort of like the generic, like kind of get up to speed. But at any point in time, we're working on a specific project. And so we'll see like a good example of the current store manager in Springfield. We're changing our processes where our retail staff will be involved in listing products on our website. Going forward, we think that's going to be like part of working a retail store. It's not going to be just answering the phones and wait and dealing with customers when they come in, because the phone's ringing less and customers aren't coming in as more. So it's going to be listing products online. And so we developed and built this system for how we were going to handle that and move that over, rolled that out to the staff. All the stores except for this one store got on board with doing it and like saw the importance of it and like jumped on board. His location just didn't. And then after a couple of conversations about, not seeing that movement, it became clear to us like I just can't, like I'm too busy to like have to just sit there and constantly like push this person forward. A
Yep.
true manager is going to be someone who can, in my mind, galvanize and rally a team around a project, and then has the tenacity to see it through completion. And if you don't have that, then you could be a great salesperson, you could be a great repair tech, you could be whatever, but you're not a manager. Like for us, for our company, because we need
No,
someone who can
no.
do that.
You probably have higher standards. I think a lot of times those people come in and sometimes they will have the ability to get there, but not always. But I think what you're saying is really true that most people, like we're in the same boat. I want my managers to be able to handle a million different things and I don't want to have to babysit them. So we get them to that place or else we can't keep them as managers. I like you, I couldn't have a manager that isn't able to just handle shit because there's so much going on in life that I don't need to be involved in. Like I want to step in for small things after an appropriate period of time of training, just like
Yeah.
you. So I get that. I think that part makes a lot of sense. I think the main thing is, like you said, you have the training program. It's that it goes back to the type of person they are. Like that's a really key thing for a manager, and you don't get that in a 20-minute interview, or you don't get
Yeah.
that with
You're right.
that. You
You
need
definitely
people that
don't.
can get things done. That's what we always
Well,
struggle
and
with.
and to be clear, we wouldn't have any reservation about someone who needed help with something. Like if we're asking someone to do something and they still don't quite understand it or whatever, that's totally cool. Like we're fine. Like, and I mean, there at some point, if you're going over it the fifth time, then maybe there's a problem. But we're happy to like train on the moment, answer questions, help. It doesn't mean they have to figure it out on their own. They
Yeah.
just have to be motivated enough to want to get projects
Yes.
completed. And whether that means asking for help internally, externally, whatever, they just have to be motivated to do that. If they're the kind of person that doesn't feel that pressure of a deadline, that doesn't feel that need to like get this thing completed,
Get done.
for us, that's not going to be a good store manager. Like I
Yes.
just
I
need
think that's
someone
for
who can do
anybody.
that.
I don't think, I mean, if you have that person, maybe if the person above them, like that, maybe that's a floor manager or something, but like a store manager, 100% agree. I think the places I see that are successful all have really good managers that are running day-to-day operations, and they all have that
Yeah.
exact like mentality you just kind of spoke to. So
I
that
think
makes
one of the I
sense.
want to kind of pivot here. So I think one of the strengths that you have that you're so good at is, again, I mentioned it like in the intro, that you have these desires. You want to offer these things that you see big stores offer, whether it's like the ability to schedule lessons through your
Sure.
website, or reordering products quickly and efficiently so that you have the right things in stock, getting rid of products that aren't turning and being successful for you, managing like repairs if the repairs are getting completed on a certain timeline. These are all things that we strive to do. These are all things that are important, but they're all things that in generally really small businesses, which even though you have several locations, is
We're
yours
small.
business is still a very small. I mean, you are like the active person that's running it, and you have like store managers and stuff, but you've been very effective at using automation and specifically crystal reports to make those things happen. So I thought maybe we could talk a little bit today about how you've used crystal reports. And it's one could use other tools, I think, and so it doesn't have to be specifically on how to do it in crystal reports, but it could be just sort of the mindset of what you're using this tool to try to help you to accomplish. So you want to share some of the things that you've built in there and why and what you get
Yeah.
out of it?
How much time do we have? No. There's so many like amazing things. I I'm very proud of the things we've done, and I feel like so we got into Crystal. I got into it back in 2008 because I didn't like how long it took to run AIM-SI reports. Like, so we're using AIM now, or ever AIM, and I hate how long it takes to run reports. And I, like you said, I've wanted to have the ability to know what's going on without being there at the stores. So with the stores, my big thing was always, um, I don't have time to run 6 million reports, and plus I'll forget to do it. So I made a manager report that would tell me all the key metrics I wanted to watch in our company. That's a huge part of it. It allowed me to reduce my oversight to once a week with the managers and doing a manager report. That was huge for us. Another thing that we use it for with our lesson program specifically, I'm really proud of our lesson program because we have AIM, and I am not a fan of their scheduling options because it doesn't integrate with anything. So what we were able to do is to integrate Crystal with Google Calendars, and so all of our teachers can have their personal schedule on their cell phone, and they can schedule and make changes to their lessons. We have one lesson coordinator for the 4 stores. It's really helped us streamline that process where in the old days we would have had to have multiple people. It would be insane to me. I look at other stores that use AIM or other things and I think, oh my gosh, how can you monitor? How can your teachers know what's going on? And that's a huge struggle. Like with our teachers, within a half hour, they get an update on their calendar if they have schedule changes. Anything that happens is all done on their phone. They don't have to go to our system. We don't have to call and tell anyone anything. It automates an email response to the person as well as pulls up on their calendar. So, I mean, we've done it for the repair techs. We have a repair sheet that gives all the techs their stats on single page where we can see all the customer repairs, the store repairs, the school repairs. We use it for just pulling metrics for employee dashboards. I mean, there's a ton of things. I mean, I couldn't do any of the things we do without that damn program. Um, I mean, it sends me it sends me reports saying where we're at compared to our budget night. It sends it to our managers. So the managers are always actively aware if they're more than a day behind of their budget goal. Like if they get behind more than a day, they know it, and I don't have to chase after them because they just get a text at night.
Right.
So I mean, that stuff is that to me has been kind of our secret sauce, and to do it on a small budget, like that's been key. Um, so I don't know. I tried other software. I tried MicroStrategy and some other ones with the old version of AIM, but for me, like you and I have talked about it, like there's Crystal's worked really well. That and Google Forms, we do a lot with Google Sheets.
Hmm.
Our budgeting process is done through that as well. So that's a lot of it. I don't know.
The I know
Go
you've helped
ahead.
us several times, get Crystal Reports up and running, and then we never are able to stick with.
It's
Because
automation, my
there's a
friend.
big learning curve to learning how to use, and it's not because the stuff isn't useful. It's extremely useful, but there's a big learning curve just working with Crystal Reports. I mean, there's a big learning curve to working in AIM by itself, and then adding Crystal Reports. There's like another. I mean, there's training classes and stuff like that one could go to learn how to do it. But once you have that, you can get all this data out of the AIM database and you can automate so much of that to drive a lot of this content. And then you can the sharing of it can even be automated about who it's
Yeah.
shared with.
Yeah.
And it can allow all this data sharing and processing to be done behind the scenes after hours without someone else having to process it, and it makes it all easier to act on. And it allows a small company to act like to be like a big company where you
Pretending
have all
bigger.
that. A big
Yes.
company probably has people pulling all this data
Yes.
together, but
We
small
don't
companies
have
can't
that.
afford. You can't
Yeah.
afford like a person to just sit here and like do all this stuff. So
And that was it. So like, and what that has allowed us to do, another couple of quick examples as we're talking, I'm thinking about like back orders. So how often is it that store orders something and it's on back order and the customer doesn't know, and then the customer has to come and tell us? Like that
right,
is one of the worst things. So automating that follow up, that back order follow up, so that when something is, if there's a problem, we're going to know before, and we're not going to know 2 weeks when we follow up on it. We're going to know right away, and we're able to contact that customer, or better yet, just find it, source it from another vendor. I think like we're a tiny company. Like I feel I'm very proud to be compared to the Hides of the world, because there's a $10 million company, we're a $2 million company. It's a whole
mm-hmm.
different place. But I think that on paper we can be competitive at times, and I think it's because we do a lot of. I think the reporting has helped us. It's the one thing I will say. It's given me a really. I feel smarter because I'm able to like know more about what's going on at the individual store level without having to do a ton of work. Like because I don't have, like you, I don't have the time, and I
Right.
don't have the manpower, the energy to do it. But if the other thing I'm going to throw out there is, let's say I forget it for a week. Let's say I don't do my job for a week. It doesn't matter. It's going to come next week again. I don't have to like do it. So that's been very helpful. Knowing how I am, having that automation has been really, really huge. And I did automation before it was cool. That's my other claim. So everyone
You
else
have been
is
doing
into
this
AI,
a
and that.
long time. And the other cool thing with
Yeah.
Crystal Reports too, for people that are using Crystal Reports, you can share reports.
Yes.
You have to kind of like plug in the right pieces. But if someone has developed a report in AIM through Crystal Reports to do the back order thing you described, for example, like one could share those reports with another company. They can connect them together and then be able to run that report.
And the software to deliver we use, it's a $30 piece of software that delivers it. And Crystal can be expensive. It's between $350 and $500. But I mean, for the what we do with it, I mean, it to me it sets us apart. It kind of is, like I said, it's my secret sauce. And I've helped other stores set it up. Is It's one of those things. I'm always happy to share it.
Mm-hmm.
My only request is like, if you make something cool, share it back. But
Right.
um, it's like you guys, you're not the only person. There's a lot of stores I've helped with it, and it's hard to get started and to maintain. It's one of those things. Everyone hearing it will be like, "Oh, that's super cool. I want to
Yep.
do it." Right? Like, "Oh, that's so
Yep.
neat. You can do all that stuff." But then once you get down to implement it, there's a lot less work for you setting it up than there was for me because I've
Right.
done all the work. But it can be time consuming. But it's allowed me to, like, if I want to know what guitars are in what's selling most between $300 and $500, whatever it is, I can just run one report, have it all separated out for me. I don't. In the old days, I'd have to run 6 reports,
Right.
and then I have to manually compare them. I just don't have the time.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah, I think if someone either is the type of person that they would find all that really interesting and like learning how to use that software and do it. I think they're a great fit for it. But if not, they've got to find someone on their team that loves it. I think that's where we struggled. Is I loved the idea of having all of that capability, but I'm just not the person to learn it. And then we tried it again when we had Amanda on board because she's like so smart, and so I was like, well, she'll be able to like get into it, but she just wasn't as interested in doing it. You know, she
Yep.
could see, and I don't even really quite know why. She could see the value in it. It wasn't that she just wasn't as interested in learning it. So if we ever run across another person or a company who like, oh no, they actually want to get into the creation of it and doing it, like they
Yeah.
dig it, they dig that, then we would probably tackle it again because that's what we need. We need that person who's like, no, I want to learn how to use crystal reports and I want to do all this stuff because I think it's so cool to be able to do all that. Like the person who thinks that, like, here we go. Like that's the one.
And I showed to CJM Everwire because he helped me. Like I helped them up with getting to AIM and shared my reports and stuff, and then he shared back the stuff they had, and it was so much better than my stuff. Like I mean, like so organized and coherent, and like my stuff always works and gets it down, but I'm a little sloppy on the direction. So I
Yeah.
mean, it's a different personality type.
Well, I think with yours too, you always get it. Like you didn't make these reports with the intention of like
No,
sharing them with the world.
they're
You
made
were
for me.
making them to get the data you needed to act on it, or that someone else, after they understood it, could act on it. And so you kind of got it like up to this point where like this is good enough, and then like
80/20,
you were off
yes.
to the next
I was
problem.
gone.
It
Yeah,
wasn't
that's
like ready
exactly
to
it.
be sold or shared
No,
necessarily, you know.
God, no, no,
Whereas
no.
someone
That's
like
exactly
Amro, they're
it.
a little bit more of like, yeah, we want to, you know, even
Polished.
if you and I have seen like their training guides and
Oh my
stuff, like their training
gosh.
guides are look like they're
It's
ready to be
like a wet
published, you
dream.
know?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
pretty
It's just
impressive.
so amazing.
So,
Whereas most of us aren't going to put that much effort and
yeah.
those guys at Amro are special in the way they do that, without a doubt.
But it's good to have them because otherwise I'd be feeling cocky over here. Like that's how it'd be. Like, like, oh man. But I feel blessed. Like I said, the big thing is I've gotten to having these resources, having people to talk to, and I can get ideas on what type of reports to run or tell me something cool that AIM doesn't give you, and I can create that, and then everyone can benefit. I
Yeah.
mean, there's so much of that stuff. So I think that's really helped us.
Yeah. Last thing I wanted to just
Yes.
maybe kind of close with is we sort of opened with this, but the value of having industry relationships and friendships. And you and I got to experience this just recently, the last week. Me and
Yes.
you, Amanda, Tristan Reek from Brass Bell Music, all descended on Nashville because our friends Lyndon and Jennifer Lance have a store, Bandwagon Music in Nashville. And so we all
We
spent several
helped.
days together in Nashville because the Lances are growing their business there, but they've got some challenges and some issues, and they wanted some insight. So we all just like, hey, let's just pack up and go, and spent several days hanging out together in Nashville, and we got to not only spend a couple days going through their store top to bottom, front to back, but we also went and looked at other stores, the new Carter Vintage Guitar, Forks Drums Closet, Williams Fine Violins. Like we kind of checked out some other stuff too, just to be inspired and see what other people are doing. But talk about the value of having these industry, not just relationships, but just true friendships. Like how has that made your business better, and how has it made your life better?
I think just like we spoke before. So growing up, like my dad, like I guess he didn't. My dad's amazing. He's a great salesman and stuff. Not he probably didn't know the resources were available with NAM, or we just didn't do NAM growing up. It wasn't like a thing. I think he thought it was just a big expense and didn't always recognize value. So when I got more involved, we started going, and I think I look back at our business and we switched our independent contractors to teachers in 2016 because of my conversation with you. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's changed our business, hundreds, millions. It's so much money later. Um, that was a substantial impact. And I think that helped me doing our Fab Four group, just kind of realize that there's so much value when you go out and have these opportunities to find other stores that you don't compete with that you can, genuinely appreciate. Because I think that music store owners, they're like, it's something special when you can have a relationship with another music store owner because they can relate to you in ways that no other store owner can. I mean, that's a huge part. I can talk about the same trials and tribulations that I've gone through. They've gone through them as well. I mean, It's different than talking, I think, to someone in the auto parts store or into a service business that they have different margins, different, it's a whole different environment. So I think that's key. And then just being able to, like we talked about, like see other stores and not critique, but like when you have a chance to look at another store, you get ideas. I came
Mm-hmm.
back chock full of ideas. I was sharing things, and like then like it makes you test your own things, the things you're saying too, like making sure like, yeah, I said that, but do we really do that still? We did at one point. Let me make sure we still do that. So I mean, it's changed our business. It's the probably the biggest thing I could recommend to anyone. Find someone not in your territory that you want to be friends with. Find someone cool. Reach out to Donovan or someone else. I mean, like there's enough out there. Like it's such a
Yeah.
great experience to have other people to share that with. So
Yeah. You think about that, those friendships, that group of four of us that, really
yeah,
just, we had such a great time together. All of those started by just sort of kind of random, somewhat innocuous beginnings. Both my relationship with both you and the Lances all started off of an email that they sent. My
yeah,
relationship with Tristan all came from for a couple of years, closing night of NAM, we would just throw a house party. And the first year I ever did it, like I, invited folks, and of course it was Sunday night, so a lot of people are already gone. And the idea was just for those who were hanging out to have a place to come in. And a handful of people showed up that first year. But Tristan was one of them. And I remember being surprised that Tristan came because I'd never thought that Tristan really liked me that much. So when she showed up, I was like, oh, I was kind of surprised to see that. And she was like, oh, I didn't really like you that much, but I was curious to see what was going on. But since then, we've
that's
become just tremendous friends. And like just sometimes those little things will have unintended consequences that can be greater than what you ever imagined. And not only are the, like you mentioned, the things that you learn, the things that you share, that kind of gives back to you, but just developing those friendships, it just makes it fun for people that know what you're going through to be able to offer advice and insight to people to help them to get the same from them. Man, just such a tremendous thing to do. And really all you got to do is just ask. And I think in our cases, we were just sort of lucky. We all kind of saw the value in each other, and those relationships formed quickly. It wouldn't always happen that way. I think if there was someone who wanted to come in and be the fifth member of our little Fab Four, we'd have to make sure they were the right fit. And if they weren't, I have a hunch we'd probably be like, not inviting them back for barbecues in the future. But because we're very, and we've got a culture that we like with that group, that we want to make sure they're the right fit. But it never hurts to try. And so getting those industry friendships are really important. And to do it, you just got to reach out. You got to reach
I'm
out
just
and
gonna.
ask for that connection.
You're 100% right. I think you forgot that I did not make the Fab Five the first time when you guys did it. You
Well,
forgot.
that's because,
Ooh.
yeah, that was when it all
Yeah.
started. It
There he
wasn't
goes.
it was an image group thing, and you were
Mm-hmm.
not in the image group, and it all started with just like four of us. We were like wanting to test
I'm
this
kidding.
idea. We wanted what we heard like people like in the AIM group and Vistage groups were doing, and so and Image didn't want to do that officially as an image thing, and so we just got four of us to like, all right, we'll just do this. And the idea was that we were going to visit each other's stores, and which we've done. And we were doing 2 stores a year. So we didn't, once we made it, I think by the time you heard about it, we were halfway through it. Like, yeah, we
Yeah.
can't add a
Yeah.
fifth one. Like
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
because we're almost done with this commitment.
I'm
So
kidding. It works.
anyway, hey, you're in it
That's
now though,
funny. Yeah, that's right. I
Ringo
made it.
Starr wasn't the
Yes.
original drummer with the
That's
Beatles.
right.
He was just
Yeah.
there for all the big hits,
Best one.
but someone else was
Yeah.
there in the
There you go.
beginning. So well, cool,
I
man. Hey, this was
appreciate
a
it.
lot of fun, and I really appreciate your willingness to share your story, to share the background of how you got started, and share both the trials, tribulations, successes, all that kind of stuff. It's a lot of fun. You too are a very connected person in this industry as well. A lot of people know who you are as well. So I think if anyone's listening finds this interesting and would like to learn more, or would like to reach out and meet up or whatever, they should certainly shoot you an email and start that conversation going, just like you did with me. So tell everybody what your email address is.
It's EJ at jimsmusiconline.com. So,
Gotcha. EJ
and
at jimsmusiconline.com. You can reach out to EJ and he can answer questions about crystal reports or any other stuff, or you just want to meet up sometime at NAM or something like that, or you want to come out to
cigar.
Green Bay, Wisconsin and have
There you go.
cigars and talk through stuff, you totally can. So
Sounds good.
All right, my friend. Hey, thanks so much for making the time for this. This was a lot of fun.
I feel honored. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.